love it. You're just getting excited over here. I'm like, let's
Sorry.
go.
Yeah,
let's
let's
do
go.
it. I wanted to hit a lie just out of the park right now.
Great.
And you kind of touched on it in your sermon yesterday or whenever that was, Sunday. The idea of there being neutral territory where, we as Christians, fully aware of spiritual things to the best of our abilities, we go to church, we're praying, we contend, we get exhausted, we're parenting, blah, blah, blah. And then we're just like, oh, I just need some me time. Let me retreat from the battlefront and go sit on the couch and watch Netflix for 3 hours. And like, this is neutral territory. I'm not growing, but I'm also not, getting further away. And there's this lie that we believe that somehow we can find these pockets of the earth that the enemy and Jesus aren't in battle over. And it reminded me of, again, Lord of the Rings, because I think it's a great example. In Middle Earth, while Sauron was trying to take over everything through darkness, you see people of like Minas Tirith who are like leading the front lines. They see it and they're like, we're putting blood and sweat into this thing to keep the darkness at bay. And then you see the hobbits chilling.
Just
and
hanging out.
it looks like they're enjoying peace. And it's almost like this little bubble. And little do they know that Aragorn and the Dunedain are all like protecting this little bubble to let them enjoy that. But you really see that at the end of the books, where it's like everyone was affected by this big struggle, and instead of thinking that there's pockets away from the front lines where we can live in peace comes when evil's destroyed. So when we bring the kingdom, when Jesus comes and wipes out everything and says peace be still, that's when we get to enjoy the peace that we've been searching for. And it's not because we're retreating, or it's not because like we decided to be away from the front lines somehow. Like what has been your experience with helping Christians engage with that warfare mindset to just like, it's not a choice, you're in it.
Well, okay. I think there's a few things. One, most Christians that I know are unaware of a battle. So when I talk about this, they're like, because they're formed primarily through Enlightenment thinking, 1800 philosophy, coming out of the Renaissance into Enlightenment, scientific reason, and the scientific revolution to rationalistic, materialistic worldview. That's what we have. We have been formed primarily through that thinking, not, there's cosmic beings working against God's good and beautiful creation. Like, we don't have that thinking. So giving them that worldview is hard for most people. They're like, if they even believe in the spiritual side of things, angels, it's like they have a framework from Touched by an Angel, or like, angels in the outfield. They're not thinking, okay, like if you read Matthew, like people are visited by angels left and right. You read the Old Testament, like this is how God, describes the heavenly realms. Like there are angelic beings all over, so that we are like fully integrated as the physical and spiritual coexist at the same time. It's more of dimensional thinking than it is like spatial. So one, most people don't think about spiritual warfare. They're not engaged. Two, most Christians, they don't even see their lives as part of God's cosmic plan for redemption. They're so, and this might sound harsh, but most Christians are just trying to survive life, and Jesus makes them feel better, versus engaged as disciple makers. My experience has been the church is sleeping on the mission of God. The church doesn't, for the most part, is unaware of the plan A that God has to use ordinary people as agents of the kingdom expansion here and now, bringing life of heaven and resources of heaven through generosity and kindness and joy, and preaching the gospel and sharing the kingdom and healing the sick and praying for people and prophesying and building communities and building businesses that flourish, and so that we are, extending God's kingdom wherever we go. Most people don't have that. Most Christians, in my opinion, don't have that like sense of mandate from the Lord. They don't feel commissioned. They're engaged in more of a consumer-oriented church life, which is I come on Sundays, I enjoy good teaching, or I'll shop around for a church that fits my preference, that has a good thing for my kids, and has easy in and out access parking. So when we're talking about warfare, We're talking about a kind of fully bought in disciple who has chosen to submit their life to Jesus in all of the resources and faculties of their life. And so if you're there, so getting to that place, which is a minority of a minority, in my opinion, and you see yourself on the front lines, your front lines is your home. Your front lines is your workplace. Your front lines is everywhere you go. There is a space for you to intercede, to be part of building and extending God's way of life. And so your household become many temples. They become a furnace for God's life to flourish. And you're also aware that anything you let into your home, as a parent, I think about this a lot. Like I'm responsible for stewarding my children and raising them up to be followers of Jesus, but also men of God who bring value to this world. And they do all of those things, but I have to steward this relationship. And that's why they don't have, a phone. My kids are way too young for phones. So they're going to hold out as long as possible. They don't have social media. They barely get to watch. They don't have much screen time at all. They don't play games. Like, that sounds super harsh. They play some games and they do watch shows, but I'm recognizing that the shows will influence their narratives. And so we are being influenced left and right from narratives, from streaming platforms, from social media, from our relationships, from the environments we have. And it's not to be like, okay, let's look, with a spotlight for the demons behind every rock and make sure we're getting rid of all the skulls in our house. Although I do agree that there are images that we take into our home that we should just be aware of. There's probably power connected to them. And I'm saying that, lightly, but just be aware. But we should be aware that there's spiritual opposition working against us. And one thing I'll say, and I've said this before, is, the question I ask people is, do you have a life worthy of opposition? Like, one of the ways I think about Christians is, hey, is your life worthy of being opposed by the enemy? Like, or are you just bought into the culture of the world and he's got you defeated before you even started? You're not a threat. But it's like, man, are you living out the scriptures? Are you living out what Jesus says about what it means to follow him today? Are you raising kids of consequence that will be impactful, whether they're in public school or homeschooled or private school? Like, they're living out the faith you have as a parent because you're intentionally discipling. Is your marriage something that you're pursuing Jesus together on? Like, there's all sorts of things, and it's all connected.